Would you like a free, easy to use, highly informative way to answer your gardening questions? Well, join me today as I show you how to learn gardening from seed catalogs. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I love my free seed catalogs, and I've learned so much over the years by perusing these catalogs. Now, I strongly encourage that you support your local nurseries and buy seeds there as often as possible. But when you get the seeds from a nursery or a big box store, often we just see the display, grab the packet of seed, pay for it, and then take it home. And all we know about that plant is what's on the seed packet. And some companies are much better than others at giving us all the information we need. Well, catalogs are kind of the same way. Some of these catalogs give us the basics of what we need to put the seeds in the ground, and others are filled with a wealth of information. And so if you get some catalogs and spend some time looking through and actually reading the catalogs with the intent of learning, you'll be amazed at what you can find. I love the Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds catalog. Beautiful information, lots of really good information about the individual seeds that you'll buy. Let's see what we can learn about a plant as simple as okra. This African native and staple of the Deep South really thrives on heat. Enslaved people from Angola called okra ngombo, which became gumbo, a popular name for several okra dishes to this day. Did you know that's how we get the name for gumbo that so many of us love to eat when we visit Louisiana, and I make myself on a cold winter day? Does best when direct sown into warm soil, but can be started earlier indoors and transplanted as long as young plants aren't allowed to become root bound. If you've ever tried to grow okra ahead of time indoors, this could be a reason why maybe it didn't work. Soil for okra needs to be especially rich. Plants are drought tolerant, but produce more with adequate moisture. And keeping pods picked encourages further production. Well, there's a whole bunch of information right there just about okra. And as I look through this entire catalog, it tells me about so many other plants that I might not have learned from just a seed packet. I love the catalog from Seed Savers Exchange too. Like Baker Creek, Seed Savers Exchange does a great job at offering the backstory, some of the history behind their seeds. But in this catalog this year, they tell more about how they actually process the seeds. And there's great tidbits of information here. Like after a few months, after the plants have matured, it's time to harvest and clean the seeds of both dry-fruited and wet-fruited seeds. Dry seed crops are processed by threshing and winnowing, while wet seed crops like tomatoes, peppers, squash, and cucumbers require a different approach, including fermenting, washing, and drying. And I've shown this in recent videos. Having a seed catalog tell you about the process that these professionals follow, and to understand that it's the same kind of process that we can do in our own gardens, is a great way to expand your gardening knowledge. And who better to learn from than the ones who are actually growing the plants to get the seed to then give to you. Fedco is another company that I enjoy reading the catalogs, and there's so much great information here. In fact, in this catalog in particular, they have a running story of the history of Fedco throughout this catalog. They do a great job telling you how to garden, not just about the individual plants. On this page, there's some great advice. It says, gardening never has been for the faint of heart. A little plant gets a good start with all the best care you can give it. Then, a few gnawing bugs appear. Later, some shriveling and browning of the leaves, web nests, and what is that gummy stuff oozing from the trunk? In many cases, These are aesthetic issues that come and go. If the plant seems mostly healthy and is growing, we take a do-nothing approach. There's always something chewing on this or that. Follow the growing instructions in the back of this catalog to head off the most common issues, such as dreaded apple borer. This is how I approach much of my gardening, just letting the insects eat. If it's a more serious disease, well, I can go to a catalog like this and expect to find some very specific information about that disease. But also this guidance, which is to basically just let it go, let it be, let it happen, is great for gardeners who often think that we have to respond to every single insect, when most of the time we really don't. High mowing organic seeds is another one that's filled with great information. Let's look at what they have to say about leeks, because this information can be used throughout the garden. Days to maturity are from transplant. Add 30 to 40 days if direct seeding. Well, this is one of those mistakes that many of us make. The seed packet should tell us days to harvest or days to maturity, but that's not the whole story. You need to add days if you're direct seeding, because often with onions or leeks, we're planting a set, an actively growing plant. So it already has a head start. Well, the seed takes longer to grow, and I've made this mistake with leeks, that I tried to start from seed in the garden, and my season just wasn't long enough to give me the plants that I wanted, because I didn't know I needed that extra 30 to 40 days. This is the kind of information you can find in seed catalogs. This information that the dates on the packages are from when the plant is in the ground or actively growing, and not just what it says on the seed packet. And as for leeks, it also says that the flavor is best after a light frost. So you can add this to your planning when you grow leeks. Intend to harvest in autumn after you've had a frost, and the flavor will be better. How about a catalog like Seeds and Such? This box has basic but important information with everything you need to grow tomatoes and peppers from seed. 6 to 8 weeks for tomatoes and 8 to 10 weeks for peppers is when you start the seeds before they go outside. The seedlings actually emerge in 7 to 14 days for tomatoes and 15 to 30 days for peppers. How long have you actually been waiting, thinking that your seeds weren't germinating, when this information gives you the exact time frame you should be looking for? Bottom heat may be needed, and transplant when the individual seedlings have 2 pairs of leaves, and then harden off the seedlings outside before transplanting. That's basic information, but especially for new gardeners, understanding the process is quite important, and it comes from a seed catalog. I like Sow True seed as well. Looking at the celery, it tells us that we need to transplant when it's 8 to 10 weeks old, or plant the seed on the surface when the temperature of the soil is 50 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Light is required for seeds to germinate, so only press into the surface of the soil. And the celery seedlings will bolt if exposed to temperatures below 55 degrees. Now, this is the kind of information that doesn't tell you the whole story. And I love finding this kind of information in a seed catalog because it really inspires me to learn more, to understand that there are seeds that need light to germinate and that they aren't just buried all the time. And the idea that the soil temperature can be so important for the plants. And the air temperature is important to decide whether the plant will bolt or not. So while this is basic information of things we should be looking for if we want to grow celery, I think it's a doorway of the kind of information that we need to do deeper research on. Prairie Moon Nursery is a catalog I buy a lot of seeds from. They have a full page that tells you how to deal with the different types of seeds that they have in this catalog. These are native plant seeds and perennials where the seed requires some special treatment if you expect germination. And their seed packages will identify which category the seeds fall into. The basic idea is that many of these native seeds, many of these perennial plants require cold stratification for the seed. That means the seed needs to be exposed to cold, often damp conditions for it to germinate. So, for example, this type of seed, in order to germinate, it needs a warm, moist period, like in the summer, followed by a cold, moist period in the winter. Then you sow the seeds outdoors in spring and expect germination the following spring, 1 year later. So if you're growing these kind of plants, it's extremely helpful to know specifically how the seed needs to germinate. But more importantly, like before, this opens the door for understanding that seeds are so different from each other. And the reason you may have a failure trying to grow certain types of seeds is because you don't understand that that seed requires very specific treatment, like the ones that are identified in this catalog. Here's an example of some of the information from this Jung Seeds and Plants catalog, specifically about blueberries. You probably know that blueberries require acidic soil, but how do you really achieve that in your garden? Well, here's some recommendations. Blueberries require a loose acid soil, a pH of 5.0 or less, well supplied with organic matter. When planting, we suggest working into the soil 1/4 to 1/2 pound of aluminum sulfate per plant. To maintain proper soil pH, apply blueberry special fertilizer each year and a top dressing of soil sulfur every 3 to 4 years. You don't find this information on a seed packet, but when you find it in a catalog, it's gold. Johnny's is a great catalog, offers lots of gardening information. Here's some information that every gardener learns, but you may learn it first in a seed catalog. For corn, crossing of super sweet varieties with non-super sweet varieties will cause tough, starchy kernels in both types. If you plan to grow both varieties, either plant super sweet varieties at least 300 feet from non-super sweet varieties, or stagger the plantings by a 12-day planting date difference and separate each planting by 25 feet. That's critical information if you like growing a lot of corn. And how about if you're growing onions? Onion bulbing is triggered by day length, and maximum day length during the growing season increases from south to north. Short day onions are grown at lower latitudes in the south, while intermediate and long day onions are grown at higher latitudes. This will make the difference between whether your onions give you the bulb you're looking for or not by choosing the right kind of onion bulb. After you've tried onions, you figure it out. If you can read it in a seed catalog first, that's a great way to start. I love Territorial Seed Company's catalog. For beginner gardeners, this is a great catalog. In the beginning, they give you some of the information you need for just the basics. Soil preparation, direct sowing, indoor seeding, transplanting, cultivation, insects, pests and diseases, harvest and storage. All of that is here in concise form, which can be quite helpful. And then for every type of plant, they have more detailed information, like for these beans. They tell you the temperature that the soil needs to be for germination, how long the seeds are expected to last. In the case of beans, 2 to 3 years. They talk about the culture, the sowing, the diseases, the insects, harvest and storage. There's just a ton of information packed in the Territorial Seed Company catalog. All of these have information in different formats and at different levels. For beginner gardeners just starting out who don't even really know what they want to grow, get as many seed catalogs as you can and just read through them. You'll be amazed at how much you can learn. And for experienced gardeners, well, start looking at the finer details. And again, you'll be amazed at what you can learn. Every year, I learn something new in every catalog that I look through, which is why I love to have my catalogs and why I spend so much time looking through these catalogs, not just for the pretty pictures, but for the great information that they contain. If you want to learn more about gardening, this is a great way to do it. Seed catalogs. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.